Welcome to The Breakdown with Brodkorb and Becky, a weekly podcast that breaks down politics, policy, and current affairs. I'm Becky Scherr.
And I'm Michael Brodkorb.
We will start this week by discussing the upcoming special elections that will be held to fill 3 vacant seats in the Minnesota legislature, and we will close the loop on Senator Mitchell's resignation. Then we will break down a bizarre incident at the Minnesota Capitol over the weekend that included a naked man's arrest. We are then going to continue this week's episode with a topic that continues our conversation from last week. On our last episode, we broke down the DFL endorsing convention for Minneapolis mayor. While there may have been shenanigans at this time, the endorsed candidate, Omar Fateh, is a socialist backed by the Democratic Socialists of America. Michael's recent Substack broke down the recent DSA's platform, and we are excited to have Julius Hernandez with us to discuss. We will close out by discussing the release of axe murderer from Minnesota prison due to recent law changes. Thanks for joining us today and enjoy the show. So we have 3 upcoming special elections. Unfortunately, one to fill the seat left vacant by the assassination of Representative Melissa Hortman of Brooklyn Park, one that was left vacant from the resignation of Senator Nicole Mitchell of Woodbury, and one that was recently left vacant following the death of Senator Bruce Anderson of Buffalo. It was previously announced that the special election to fill the seat for Representative Melissa Hortman will take place on September 16th. There is anticipated to be a primary in that race on August 12th, which is just around the corner. But just this week, we got the call for the other 2 special elections to be held November 4th. This will be for the Hortman seat, for the Mitchell seat and the Anderson seat. Let's start, before we get into some of the details here, let's start by closing the loop on Senator Nicole Mitchell. So recently we kind of updated on the case, on everything. She was found guilty of first-degree burglary and felony possession of burglary tools following that week-long trial, and will be sentenced in September. Now, you're kind of, you like to call me the legal expert, but you read a lot of and do a lot of research surrounding court cases and know all the ins and outs of that. Originally, her attorneys said that she was going to be resigning August 4th, but resigned on Friday following finishing her work early. Is that weird?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit. I think a lot of people were surprised that she was going to resign in August. It seemed that it would happen rather quickly. But I think the part of the reason why she wanted to stay on was, additional pay, healthcare, other types of, kind of life things. But I think there was some a lot of frustration and a lot of, why is it taking so long for you to resign? So I think she was very efficient in getting any pending work that she had to get done, and she was able to move on and exit the Minnesota Senate. And now there'll be a special election for the seat. Here's the thing, though: does she run?
I think she would.
First of all,
she could.
So there's
but then why resign?
Sure, I think you resign. I think that, first of all, we can talk more about this, but I think the district is a good district for the Democrats. She could make the case to the voters like, okay, this happened when I was in office. The judicial process has worked its way through. I represented you. I mean, I don't know that there was a big case to knock Mitchell out of office. I mean, obviously there's an election cycle and it's a Woodbury. It should be a district that Republicans can win. But the reality is that the reason she's out of office is because of behavior that she did independent of what she did in office, meaning votes and things like that. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to, I've long held the position that she should have resigned and stepped down. But she could certainly make the case to the voters, like, now that you know what I did and I've accepted responsibility through the legal process, I think now that the case has been adjudicated, I want to run again. I don't know that she will.
But interesting take. I had never crossed my mind, but I guess you're right. If the voters choose to look past it and vote her back in, then she could say, I left it up to the voters. They wanted me, get over it, right?
That being said, having watched a lot of the trial and seen the body cam footage, I don't think she was there for any other reason other than to break in. And And I don't think that anything came out in the criminal trial that really helped her case out. And obviously the jury found her guilty very quickly.
Right.
I now understand why they didn't want the body camera footage out, because it was bad. And so in all honesty, I think probably the Democrats get a traditional candidate, one that's not going to have a sentencing hearing coming up very soon. But she certainly could run. But I don't think anything in the trial that came out worked in her favor. And in fact, every disclosure, I think, showed why they fought so long to not have her step aside.
Wouldn't you love to see the TV ads that were made against her, though?
It
With
would be
that
totally
footage,
scorched earth.
hands
It would
out,
be
looking like a cat burglar.
it would be
Oof.
totally scorched earth.
Yeah, that's like a Veep
Um,
episode.
Now the thing is, I think that voters and the general public understand that people make mistakes, and I'm a big believer in second and third chances. It might be a bit quick for her to just jump right back in. That's the process, and boy, that would be fascinating. As someone who literally has no dog in the fight, my goodness gracious, that would make for an exciting summer. And the attack ads and the television ads would just be something for the ages.
Well, we would know next week because filing is due by 5 p.m. on August 6th.
And former Representative Kelly Fenton, who was on our podcast, she would like to say that she ruled it out. I'm leaving some of the door open,
There you
but we'll
go.
see. We'll see.
We will see.
I think the episode was clear that she was not interested in doing it, and she was ruling it out. But I'd like to just. I always have to have a little bit of hope, and maybe she'll still. Kelly will. Former Representative Fenton will still pull the trigger. We'll see.
I certainly support reasonable Republicans like Representative Fenton to throw their hat in the race. So definitely welcoming that option. It should be noted, Mitchell did win. This was her first term. She won by 17 points. So the district
It's not close.
is a little tough, but crazier things have happened.
Have you heard about any potential candidates?
I have not.
Okay.
I have also, maternity leave. I'm not super in
Yes.
the loop these days.
Absolutely.
Uh, the second one that we have coming up, there was Senator Bruce Anderson. He's a Republican from Buffalo, died suddenly last week at the age of 75. He served in the legislature for 30 years. He was somebody that I had worked with a little bit on my time there, and on some projects with the firm that I'm with now. Really good guy, very kind, always willing to have a conversation with absolutely anybody. He was elected to the House in 94 and the Senate in 2012. And he won his seat re-election by 36 points. It is arguably one of the most red seats in the state. It includes Buffalo, Monticello, Annandale. But we are very, very sad to hear of his passing. He was one of the good ones. I was a big fan.
He was always kind, a gentleman, scholar, just always personable, always just willing to, just a true testament to what public service can be about. And he was just a dedicated public servant. And in a world full of toughness and ugliness, the world was better and the legislature was better for having someone like Bruce Anderson, who served in both the House and the Senate. He will be missed. And you correctly noted that it's a great Republican district. And so I think it's pretty fair to say, when we're going through and looking at all the special elections, I don't think based on the districts that there's going to be a partisan change. I think the only potential one would maybe be Woodbury. That would be if Representative Fenton got in the race. I think it could certainly shake things up. But I think Republicans are expected to keep the seat in Wright County, and the seat of that Speaker Emeritus Hortman represented is a good DFL district. And I think Woodbury would only be a targeted swing district if Representative Fenton got in. So we shall see what happens. But I'm truly putting the squeeze on her.
I love it. It should be noted there's been 3 other specials this year. So we'll wrap up the year with 6 special elections this session, which is pretty high in my knowledge of recent history. We'll hopefully not see too many more and just keep the team we've got and move forward.
No, you're absolutely right. It's for a number of tragic reasons. There's been a number of special elections, and so let's hope that this is the last of them, and we'll have a normal election cycle in 2026.
Absolutely. So, speaking of work up at the Capitol, there was a very interesting situation that arose this weekend at the Minnesota Capitol. A man was found naked sitting in the Senate chambers in the Senate president's chair. Articles show that this gentleman was found late Friday night after an alarm was set off. He told guards he was the governor, asked why he always sees news people at the Capitol. He told officers the Capitol was his home, and when asked where his clothes were, he said in an upstairs closet. He was taken to Regions Hospital and then apparently released, only to be returned to the Capitol Saturday morning, discovered again at 7:30, once again taken to Regions, once again released, and for a third time, he returned to the Minnesota Capitol. At this point, he was then arrested due to a warrant out in Wisconsin. Initial takes when you saw this story come out?
A couple of things, and please correct me if I'm wrong. He was inside the Capitol once, but then the other two times he was caught on the Capitol grounds. Is that correct?
That's my knowledge of it, yes.
So he breached the Capitol complex, like getting inside the building once. Look, let me say this to you. Because of the events of June and other things, I think the security of legislators and the security of the Capitol is really getting the proper scrutiny that it needs. Love to get your take on that in a second, but I think that this raises questions about the security apparatus that exists at the state capitol and on the Capitol grounds. And I think, I'm always hesitant to second guess law enforcement because I think that they do just a phenomenal job in very difficult circumstances. I'm puzzled a bit about the 3 times that he was back. I mean, he was there once, arrested. You would think that being naked inside the Capitol would be enough for you to be detained in some way. But the fact that he came back 2 additional times, as much as it's a kind of a comic story because it's a naked guy and kind of what he says, the reality is that it's a serious matter because of what's happened in June and all concerns that have happened. Let's not forget that earlier this year, before there was kind of a full kind of official legislative session, there was a confrontation in a committee hearing where someone was very upset about what was going on, and a number of legislators on the Republican side were targeted. And it was a full-on protest inside a committee hearing. And so I think that this dovetails into a broader discussion that I think we need to have about what our expectations for the public should be at the Capitol complex. And I think that this is coming along at a very important time, not to say that it's a good time and not to say that you'd want this incident to happen, but the safety and security of legislators and staff and the other public that are there, I think are getting much due scrutiny that they need. It's just sad that it has to be a naked dude inside the state capitol that is having this type of discussion, because it could have gotten much more ugly.
I completely agreed. A few thoughts I have on the situation. First being, I do think that there are some tough spots for police and peace officers in situations like this where there clearly appears to be some sort of mental health or substance issue going on. The individual also claimed that he woke up in daddy's chair, that Jesus was his father and Mary was his mother. It appears in my reading of these, that's why he was sent to the hospital and not detained. So I do understand that. However, there was a warrant out for his arrest. So I think, again, we kind of look at those situations where, when do we take arrest or police action versus mental health action, and should they coincide? And that's a whole nother subject to discuss. But on the security side, I mean, this was a major breach. An article I read said that security video showed that he was in the Capitol shortly after or before 2 p.m. on Friday. When it was open to the public, he was there. That was fine. But he was seen carrying a wedge, and it was a wedge that they later found out was used to prop open a door that allowed him to re-enter. So
that I didn't know.
Yes. So this is I think it was the Fox 9 story that I was reading. That is extremely concerning. That means that when security and when the Capitol was shut down for the evening, it was left open. which means, is very concerning to think about what an individual would be able to do with access to the Capitol without anybody there at night. Obviously, yes, an alarm was tripped when he did enter, but was that only because he entered the Senate chamber? Unclear what else could have happened. But definitely things need to be looked at and changed regarding how they shut down and secure the Capitol at night. But also, I know conversations will be held in this upcoming session, whether they add mags or security, more security for folks visiting the Capitol, that they have to go through metal detectors or whatever that looks like. I know lots of conversations will be had. And to your point, overdue and unfortunate that it takes situations like this to happen, but we will certainly be discussing this as it comes through next legislative session.
I'm a big transparency person, want the Capitol to be open and accessible to people. But if you go to a courthouse, you go to a number of places, you have to go through a metal detector and have to get it checked. I've also held the position that as much as I want the Capitol to be accessible, I remember when I worked up at the legislature, there would be, kids running around school trips.
Mm-hmm.
I would say to them, I'm like, look, I don't come into your classroom and be loud. Why are you coming to my place of employment and being difficult? And so I'm half joking there, but I do think
Get off my lawn.
I do think there should be there should be a higher expectation on that to make sure that senators, members of the House, and staff and everyone is safe up there, and the public, and people have a right to go to the state capitol, engage in the civic process, be a part of the kind of checks and balances by watching what's going on. But I just think there's some common sense reform that could be done, and it's unfortunate that a nude man who thought he was the governor sitting in Senator Bobby Joe Champion's chair in the Minnesota Senate is the reason why we're having some of these conversations.
Well said. We are excited to kick things off today by welcoming Julius Hernandez back to the show. Julius, you are here to discuss the Democratic Socialists of America platform. This is something, if you're not already getting Michael's Substack, go sign up for it. He recently did a Substack breaking down the 2021 DSA platform. And this kind of dovetails again off our conversation that we had with Darwin Forsyth about the DFL Minneapolis endorsing convention for Minneapolis mayor. As we all know, Senator Omar Fateh, who currently is endorsed pending any potential changes to that. He is endorsed by the Minneapolis DFL. He is also endorsed by the Twin Cities DSA chapter. And so I think, we talk a lot about the kind of breakdowns in the Republican Party. We're focusing today on the breakdowns within the left, right, and center of the Democratic Party, namely the DSA platform. So, Michael, I want you to kick things off and kind of walk us through your findings when you were researching and going through the wild and crazy DSA platform.
So the reason why I did this is because I had seen a couple media interviews with that Senator Fatah had done, and there was kind of this kind of playful kind of lack of curiosity that existed in some of the interviews about the fact he was a Democratic Socialist. And as someone who, certainly aside from the partisan time that I have, I certainly have a good operational history of the Minnesota DFL and the values that it has and where it stands on a number of things. And so when the media was conducting some of these interviews, I was a bit surprised that they didn't dial down more a bit on that, what a Democratic Social is versus being a member of being, what a standard, DFL is, a standard Democrat. There are huge differences. And so in kind of reviewing their platform, I looked at their most recent one, which was 2021, and I was literally stunned. I was literally stunned about a couple of things, that Senator Fatah is not getting more questions about what it means to be a Democratic Socialist, in contrast to what being a Democrat, being like because he's currently, I think is the operative word, the endorsed candidate for mayor in Minneapolis by the Minneapolis DFL. But the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, is out there. And I would say they are fringe. And what was interesting in reviewing their platform is how little scrutiny I think Fatah's gotten, and also how little examination there has been of their record. The DFL this is a blue state. On a good day, it's Vikings purple. but it's a blue state, and Democrats have really run the table with elections. And so I think it's important, and it's good that we have the latitude on the podcast to break it down. We need to break down the difference between someone being endorsed by the DFL party and someone who is a DSA endorsed candidate running and seeking the DFL endorsement, particularly at a local level. Those are entirely different types of candidates. And looking through their platform, I was really surprised about, they want to abolish the United States Senate and the Electoral College. They want to abolish prisons and police. They want to end all deportations, open borders. The one that, as the capitalist pig that I am, got most agitated about was they're kind of wanting to replace capitalism and private property. That was really, I have a reading problem. I have a reading disorder, and I thought I had suddenly slipped back with my reading as I was reading this platform, realizing how bad it was. I mean, this is a pretty extreme platform, some of these positions. I also think some of the positions I didn't highlight also was, universal banking system, basically, government jobs that they can have, nationalization of oil, energy, kind of any fossil fuel entity. I think also their willingness to kind of turn a blind eye to, some of the sex trafficking issues because of their advocacy for legalizing, all sex workers and things. I think there are a variety of issues here that I think are incredibly problematic. And I think, respectfully, I think warrants more discussion. I think Senator Fatah should be asked, okay, so you want to eliminate the United States Senate? You want to abolish the police and abolish prisons? What type of society do we have in that particular instance? And I want to pause for a second, just note one thing, which is a lot of people in response to the post that I made, and we can talk about some of the reaction to it, but one thing that people have asked is they've made a very specific point in saying, well, what can the mayor of Minneapolis do? What can they actually do? The truth of the matter is that if someone gets elected with this type of platform and this advocacy, what they can do is they can help raise awareness about this. So if Senator Fatah gets elected, Senator Fatah is then the incumbent mayor of Minneapolis who was embraced and endorsed by the DSA. He advocates for their platform, and that gives them a rung up the ladder where they can raise the visibility on some of these absolutely fringe issues that I don't think the vast majority of Minnesotans know. I also question whether voters in Minneapolis have fully examined what it means to be a DSA endorsed candidate. Julius, your take.
Yeah, I think it's like it's first of all, let me start with this. I despise Democratic Socialists. I don't think that they deserve a place in the Democratic Party. Their values are inconsistent with those of even the normal mainstream Democrats that are in this country and the platform that we have as an actual party. And let me just go off on a tangent here for a second. The Democratic Socialists of America have I will give them credit. Some of their leadership is smart, but let's focus on two things, right? First of all, their membership, self-admittedly, is 95% white. And also, self-admittedly, under 30, 90% of their membership is under 30. So just to give you some context, a lot of these people are people that have gotten involved in this because they have some sort of white guilt or they have some sort of issues with how they were raised. And so now they think they're the savior of everyone else and they think this is the way to do it. My opinion on Democratic Socialists has been solely formed on the interactions I've had with them at the local level here in Minneapolis because they are fairly prominent. They're not the majority, but they definitely have people who align with them that are in elected positions on the city council and in some other places around the city and the metros as well. But here's what I would say. The Democratic Socialists of America have one of the most ridiculous platforms I've ever seen in my life. They want to abolish white supremacy. Me too. I'm not a white guy, if you couldn't tell, but I'm not particularly sure how you would abolish white supremacy. They want to get rid of the police.
I want to abolish white supremacy too, so I'm not speaking out against.
Let's see.
We're glad you guys are allies.
That's three of us. We're all in agreement on that one.
But it's like they want to do some of these things that even working class people of color are voting against. By the way, abolition of the police is one of them. Omar Fateh went on MSNBC and the moderator asked him directly, do you want to defund the police or have you run on defunding the police? And his exact answer was, I have not run this campaign on the platform of defunding the police. Very interesting, because up until just a couple of weeks ago, his website had that exact phrasing. It said, end policing as we know it and abolish the Minneapolis Police Department. So that's not even, and that's one part of just a large group of ridiculous things that they want to do. They want to, what's another one? Oh, they want to basically, like you said, get rid of prisons. They want to get rid of drug courts. They want to get rid of the current immigration system we have that I think is flawed, but gives us a good grip on how and who we allow into the country, right? They want to, do all of these things that I just think are ridiculous, but specifically from a group of people that, one, have never built up the actual Democratic Party, and are trying to infiltrate our ranks to basically throw everyone who's built this party up out and say that they are the new Democratic Party. They are not. They're a bunch of ideological purists that have no experience in life, that have never done anything meaningful in this country, have never passed legislation that's meaningful, and all of their people cannot win a race outside of deep blue districts. Zoran Mamdani, if he wins as the mayor of New York City, would be a rare case in which a Democratic Socialist has become the mainstream. But even he has lied about what he believes and what he aligns with the Democratic Socialist platform. They want to abolish the state of Israel, which whatever you think about them, and I think some of the things they have done have been bad in the last 3 years relating to Gaza. Israel is theirs because of a specific reason. It's called the Holocaust and Jewish persecution. And they are also a breeding ground for anti-Semitism and racism when it doesn't align, when the people that they're racist against don't align with them. So that's really, that's really how I feel about me. Ask me again, and I'm happy to do more. But that's where I'll leave it for now, because these people, in the lamest terms, they're crazy. They are not Democrats. And putting Democratic in front of the name and the word socialist doesn't make you one. So, yeah.
I will share my opinion, and then Julius, I have a question or two for you on this. I think, when I read this, it strikes me as some things we've also seen on the Republican side is folks who put together a platform, like you said, Julius, with just all of the idealistic things that they want that could never actually happen. There's not time, money, or space for all of these things to be enacted and to be true on a national scale. It's just simply cannot come to be. And so there's a reason why these folks haven't been largely elected, is because folks know that if you put, a cost study behind all of these, it just doesn't work, right? So we see that, this kind of rise up from different fringe groups, left, right, often, and this is one of those. My question to you, Julius, though, and this is, again, putting on my bright red Republican hat, not to be confused with the MAGA hat, but just, my Republican partisan hat, let me clarify. Do you think there is some, I have built a lot of relationships with members of the press, but I do think that there is a bias in the media, and I do think that there has been a failure by media to dig into some of the differences on the Democratic Party the way they have on the Republican Party. On the Republican side, I think a lot of times you hear from some fringe group that says some wild and crazy thing, and all Republicans are racist, all Republicans are white supremacists, all Republicans are associated with whatever that fringe idea is. On the Democrat side, Democrats seems to have been able to get away with this, that they're just a fringe group, they're not us. And now maybe that is a messaging thing. We know Democrats have been some great messengers. But would you say there's been a failure of the media to kind of drive that wedge and help pick apart that? Or are they just giving Democrats a pass?
Yeah, I think I would say two things to that. One, it's absolutely the media's fault that there's this inseparable divide between what a mainstream Democrat is and what the Democratic Socialists are on our platforms. Because if I went and told any mainstream Democrat in North Minneapolis, where I live, hey, would you would you want to abolish prisons or the police? And on their website it says end occupation of Black and brown neighborhoods. I live in one of those Black and brown neighborhoods. I don't really see any cops or any occupation going on. So I think the media has not done a great job, but here's who I would blame more. Democrats, mainstream Democrats in this state and across the country have not made a good presentation of what these things are. I don't care what Omar Fateh or Zoran Mamdani or Ilhan Omar tell you. They are democratic socialists. They believe in these things. And if you sign on to that label, you are signing on to their platform. And if you don't agree with it, then you are not one of them. So I think the media has done a bad job, but Democrats have done a bad job. Like, nice guy. I like him. I think he'll be a good chair. Richard Karlblom came to the Minneapolis DFL convention and said this is a big tent party, including Democratic Socialists. No, it is not. They are not Democrats. They have spent their time in this city trying to oust people who are actual Democrats that have built this party for them to have the ability to go and say, be privileged enough to say that they can use our infrastructure and our money and our people to advance whatever weird agenda that they have going on. So here's what I would just say this too. National Democrats have this weird thing where our loudest people somehow guide where we go. Democratic Socialists are not the majority of this country. They're not even a majority of the Democratic Party. They are just loud. And they will try to push anyone out that doesn't align with them 110%. And what we have to do is decide, are we going to let these people take over our party and continue to use our resources and our money? Or are we going to make a staunch case that they are not Democrats? And the media has to do a good job when they ask Omar Fateh, do you want to defund the police? And he says no, to then bring up the receipts and say, that's actually funny because 3 years ago you were sitting outside of a protest that had abolished the police on it. Or you have made it a point to pass policy that does not align with the democratic values that we have and aligns with democratic socialists. So I think it's twofold, right? It's the media and it's the Democrats ourselves who have not done a very good job of defining and showing that divide of where we disagree, and it's pretty fundamental. And it's a little, unfortunately, sad that On the Record with Michael Brodkorb had to be the first major media outlet to bring up these differences between these two parties, because my party, the Democratic Party, the mainstream Democrats, like we gotta make a stand now. That's my honest opinion, or else we are gonna have our own Tea Party, and it won't be Tea Party Republicans, it'll be Tea Party Democratic Socialists, and we'll lose whatever advantage we have now with the people in this country who keep electing us. So,
Becky, I had a question for you, which was, I mean, you're smart, you follow current affairs, you follow current events, you know politics as good as anyone in the state. Were you a bit surprised by what was in this platform? Because I was taken aback I was like, why didn't I ask these questions sooner? And why the media hadn't asked more. I mean, because this is pretty shocking stuff. I was totally agreeing with everything you said about the kind of gotcha, kind of guilt by association that happens with the media. But I wanted to get your take on what of this do you think is known by the broader, aside from being a member of the DSA and aside from being someone who kind of lives in that universe, I don't think it's known by a lot of people.
Yeah, I will say yes and no. I think that there are some, the defund the police, the canceling all debt, the BDS movement against Israel. Some of those ones that I do associate with socialists or socialism. I think seeing it all in one place is a little more striking. And again, I think it kind of comes from just the lack of attention both by the media and by Democrats on this. I mean, I think that we have seen a lot of attention, rightly so, in the Republican side about what some of the, quote, crazy fringe ideas that there are and policies that are trying to be pushed through, whether it's from the Freedom Caucus or different associations on the right. And we just have yet to see that on the left. And again, I think it's just interesting to me because I think the Democrats have skated by just kind of being able to say, oh, no, I'm not, I don't support that, without more attention being on why is that such a compelling, why is there a defund the police movement, and breaking down those barriers a little bit to kind of expose that this is a fringe group and not mainstream. I think that Democrats have just been able to deny it and move on without a little bit more attention being spent on that there is a movement, there is a group, there is a fringe organization that truly does back this, push this, or promote this. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot. We've been seeing a lot more of attention on this. I think even just obviously in the last couple of months from New York, from this endorsement, I certainly know that the new DFL chair's opening statement I saw from national news articles pick up that socialists were included in the big tent party. And so I just think it will be interesting. I'm curious of both of your takes before we wrap on this, of what do you anticipate as we move forward, regardless of what happens with the endorsement, if he keeps or does not keep the endorsement. Do you think there will be some dem on dem fighting in this situation, because, targeting the DSA, because again, without having those barriers broke down and just a simple denial, Democrats haven't been forced to fight each other and argue against other Democrats' ideas, and they have been allowed to be the big tent party. We haven't seen it like on the right when we have Action for Liberty, who have this group saying, if you're not with us, you're against us. Do we expect that infighting to really be prevalent here in Minneapolis this cycle? Julius, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say yes. And it's been happening for a while, but I think this was kind of this propelled it into like kind of a broader spotlight. But it's been happening for the last 7 or 8 years, basically since George Floyd, and it got really tense, and it's been tense, right? I mean, the members of the city council that are aligned or identify as Democratic Socialists have made it a priority in this city not only to act irresponsibly as governing partners to the rest of the city here, but also have made the mayor's life incredibly difficult for no reason except they don't like him because he's a white man who's actually good at his job. Minneapolis is better and in a better place than it was 5 years ago because our mayor has a level head and has decided to stand up against these people who do things that they know are objectively not okay, but they're ideologues and they don't actually care about doing things that are reasonable, that are rational, that are rooted in fact and data, and that also are just normal. I mean, and I just want to go back to this for a second because I think there's something too that you mentioned that I wanted to hit on, which is there is a lot of connection and crossover between the far right of the Republican Party and the far left of our party, or the DSA, which is one of the biggest things is abolishing USAID. I just read a study that said 300,000 people will die of AIDS because the United States has pulled all its funding for AIDS programs and HIV programs across the entire world. One of the things they want to do is like basically what is it? It says discontinue U.S. support of Israel's oppression, including ending all military aid and resisting the normalization of relations between the Israeli government and our government. That's absurd. That is an absurd thing to do. And so I would just say there will be infighting. There always has been, but it's going to be a lot hard. It's going to be a lot more harsh now. And I think truth will prevail. Omar Fateh has a lot to answer for, and he has a lot of issues and things in this platform that people should hold him to account to. And should ask, do you believe that we should discontinue USAID? Do you believe that we should abolish the police? Do you believe that we should get rid of a capitalist system, which, by the way, has pulled you and your family out of poverty to be able to say these things and have the money that you do and drive a BMW? So, I think there needs to be, and I think the Democrats in the city of normalcy, the ones like Jacob Fry and some of the people that I align with, need to start holding their feet to the fire and say, do you believe that capitalism is bad? Because it seems like it's been working out well for you. So I think it will happen. I think it'll be pretty rough. And I think it'll be a long process to kind of figure out where we're going to go from here.
Becky, to answer your question, yes. I mean, I think that two things. I think the statements by the new DFL chair about embracing DSA, it's now legitimate to ask the candidates running for statewide office where the DSA fits in their vision of the Democratic Party and their vision of kind of one Minnesota. I think it's very fair to ask them that. Number two, I will say that Fatah, independent of the statements that the DFL chair made, Fatah's candidacy in and of itself represents an opportunity, and I think a much needed opportunity for Democrats to be asked, statewide candidates that are running, do you support him? Where do you stand? Where are the issues that you agree or disagree with? And regarding that fight, it's a discussion we can have at a later point, but I posted my Substack on Blue Sky, and my goodness, the reaction about Blue Sky. It was very, very heated. people were very upset about my posts on Blue Sky, and were very supportive of the DSA agenda. There were a couple people that, but overwhelmingly, the people responding to my post thought it was great, thought it was basically a call to action, thought it was wonderful stuff, and they were ready to rally around that. And I honestly don't think that that's known amongst the broader kind of political class and people paying attention right now. And in this podcast, I think in my Substack and other places, it's going to be a good discussion to have going forward.
And just last thing I'll point out, because you made a good point, and I just wanted to throw this in there. If people like Tim Walz and people like whoever the Democratic nominee is for U.S. Senate this upcoming cycle want to win and convince people out of state or broader Minnesota that they are not interested in what this platform is and who it is, having Omar Fateh as mayor of Minneapolis isn't going to do them any good when they have to run statewide and explain to voters, why is this person leading your party in the biggest city in the state? Why is this someone that, are you going to stand up against them and say this is not what I believe as a Democrat, or are you going to stand behind them and defend them? So I think Walz specifically, Governor Walz and whoever the nominee is, but particularly Peggy Flanagan, if she becomes the nominee, are going to have some very, very, very serious issues running statewide. And to just end with this, our delegation in Minneapolis, our statewide delegate or our state legislator delegation, has made it incredibly difficult for us as Democrats to win across the state because we keep doing these incredibly radical things at the state legislature that have made people see our image as too far left. And whether you agree with that or not, that's why we've lost a lot of seats in the Iron Range. And so I think those are things to think about too for some of these other officials elected statewide and that are looking to win and take back the House and keep the Senate. So
I am very anxiously excited to watch this play out, because I do think it's going to be, as you say, the first time that some of these individuals are going to have to take a stance and distance themselves from a group that has been able to fall under the umbrella of Democrat or the DFL. And so I think it's going to be interesting to watch some of that fallout, some of that drama, because I don't think it's going to be a quiet battle. I think it's going to be loud and messy, and I'm here for the show. Pop some popcorn, and I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, you as a what is it? A staunch Republican is going to love the blue on blue violence. I know you're ready for it.
We've had enough of it. We've been seeing it, dealing with it on our side for the last 10, 15 years. So we're sharing the wealth, spread it. Hey, with socialism right there. Spread the wealth.
Well, yeah, very good.
Moving on to another interesting topic of the week. A convicted ex-murderer was released from a Minnesota prison. I'll set this up and kind of, Michael, turn it over to you. David Braum murdered his parents and two siblings with an axe in 1988 at the age of 16. And was convicted of multiple life sentences or life terms in prison. In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court did rule that mandatory life sentences without parole for juveniles was unconstitutional. And last year, a law went into effect in Minnesota that ended life sentences for offenders convicted of children. So a little bit of the setup of this is there was, during the 2023 legislative session, is when this was battled out. Republican Senator Jordan Rasmussen did offer an amendment to the omnibus bill that would kind of change the timeline. And this is one of the cases he brought up, 96 cases, 96 cases that would be affected by this new rule. And the Minnesota DOC said that under the old law, Braum would have had to serve a minimum of 51 years, eligible for parole in 2037. But with this law change, he became eligible for parole in 2018 and was released to a workhouse, going to be released to a workhouse here because of this new law. Michael.
So a little bit of, I'll gauge a little bit of my own ageism as how old I am. I remember this case very well. This happened in 1988. I remember it. I mean, it was all over the news, the axe murders down in Rochester. And in fact, when I went to college in 92, my roommates, people on the dorm that I lived with, were from Rochester. And once we knew they were from Rochester, we asked them, hey, did you know David Braum, and did you know the Braum family and what happened? And it was just a little bit of morbid curiosity. I think that it's so when to hear his name come back up in the news, it's really a kind of a blast from the past. And to think that he's out. I understand, and I'm going to defer to the legal analyst on the podcast, Becky, to give the legal perspective. I understand I understand the chain of events that led to his release. I think that this is going to be a big issue in the upcoming election cycle. I think that the vote that was taken, I think the fact that David Brom is out of jail, is particularly what he did. I think that for those who are old enough to remember something else significant that happened in '88, which was the use of Willie Horton in a presidential race, and the use of crime and the discussion of weekend furloughs in the presidential race. By the way, for those listening who don't know about the Willie Horton thing, just remember it was Al Gore that first brought it up, not the Bush campaign against Dukakis, but it was a Democrat that first raised the issue of Willie Horton. I think you're going to see David Brom on the election, all across the election, in the upcoming election. It's going to be mail pieces on TV, other things. This is just too big of a case, and particularly Senator Rasmussen kind of laying the groundwork for this and warning that this could happen. I think that you're seeing one of the issues that I think is really going to come up. And I think a year from now, as we start, we get closer into the election next year, but a year from now, it wouldn't be surprised if we were already seeing mail pieces hitting, this being a part of a broader messaging against Democrats in office, those who voted for it, and any of the constitutional officers that support it. Again, I understand all the legal process, and I'll defer to the legal analyst on this podcast to explain it. But this is a massive political issue, and it's going to be, I think, a massive campaign issue for anyone who was supportive of the release of people like David Brom.
Julius, I'm interested in your take on this as well, because I agree. I think, Republicans have found a lot of success in arguing public safety and crime. Democrats, lack of willing to prosecute and easy sentencing. Rasmussen in his statement said, "I warned of this exact scenario during the 2023 public safety debate. It is precisely the kind of outcome I sought to prevent. The Democrats' soft on crime approach has led to a dangerous early release like this one. The release of David Brom is a profound failure of justice and painful betrayal of memory of the victims." It goes on and on. And again, I think this is something Republicans have been running on, I think successfully, and one that I think polls well, and, especially in the suburban areas, which we know are going to be a large battle in the 2026 election cycle once again. What's your take on this case, its potential ramifications for Democrats and use in upcoming mailers, ads, and the like?
I will say I do think it's a liability solely because Republicans are liars. So that's like the biggest reason why. But I just want to be clear about something here. Like, hold on. I just want to be clear about something.
Axe murderer.
This is such a, okay. And I got into an argument with a representative about that, where they said their literal claim was Democrats want to release axe murderers. Let's relax. Okay. First of all, that's not the truth. That's not even what the bill does. But what it does do is the Supreme Court banned mandatory in 2012. The Supreme Court struck down mandatory life sentences without parole for juvenile offenders that commit homicide. They banned lifelong sentences for non-homicide offenders, and they revoked it, or they said that the juvenile offenders that cannot get the death penalty. So what this law does is bring the Minnesota justice system into alignment with the Supreme Court of the United States. Now, let's also be clear about something here too. This isn't the Democrats saying this guy can be released. This goes to a parole review board of the prison that this man is in. Are you going to go up to any Democrat and say, do you think this axe murderer should be let out of jail? And they're going to say yes? No. Everyone's going to say no. What he did was heinous and disgusting. He was also a juvenile. And is there a potential that someone who goes to jail for something so heinous can change their life in 40 or 50 years? Yes. I'm not defending him. I think it's disgusting. I think it's awful. But again, the reality is that if we are going to make the claim that we are pro-life, we should be pro-life about these people who are these kids who make very awful choices when their brains are not fully developed and they don't understand the world around them. So I just want to be clear. This is taken way out of context. This is in alignment with the Minnesota or with the Supreme Court of the United States. And also, at the end of the day, this bill doesn't let him out. It allows for his case to be reviewed and for a review board at that jail to say if he's eligible for parole or not.
I mean, Becky, reasonable Julius is no longer allowed in this podcast.
I mean, I will obviously take offense to Republicans' lie. I think the differing of takes on this is pure politics, and I think that this is something that we see all the time of, one side attacking the other by pulling out some minimizing or minimal thing that they can target and twist and turn. It's politics, and that's the name of the game. So Republicans are not lying. They're looking at this from a different lens than Democrats are. I agree in some respects that yes, this is a parole board. It's not Governor Walz saying David Brown should be released. However, there are votes that are taken, and this law change, yes, you say to be aligned with the Supreme Court, but still had to be passed in the legislature. It was supported by Democrats. So I do think it is fair to say that because of Democrat X, Y, and Z in whatever mailer, this gentleman is now out of prison. That is the facts of the case. You voted on it. There was enough Democrats to vote to pass it. That allowed for this gentleman to go before his parole board and let yes, step 1, 2 equals 3. It is the facts of the matter.
Can I ask you a question though? And this is what I'm very curious about. They did this, right? This bill was passed for the sole purpose of aligning juvenile prison standards with the United States Supreme Court. Do you think that the state of Minnesota and its juvenile parole standards should be out of alignment with the federal government? Is that what Republicans would claim by saying this? I mean, I get it's politics, right? But it's also a lie. It's objectively a lie. No, Democrats don't want to release axe murderers. That's just false. Let me end with this. If you want to attack the policy, that's totally fine. But if I see on a mailer, Democrats love murderers, they want to get rid of axe murderers, I'm going to lose my mind because that's absurd and ridiculous. That's and false. It's also false.
I don't know it will be that in so many words, but correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, and maybe this is my ignorance of the matter, but does a law need to be passed in every single state every time the Supreme Court makes a ruling? Or there are things that the U.S. Supreme Court rules on that become the law of the land without individual state ruling on. So obviously there was something more to this bill, right? Otherwise it would have just been the case.
And I guess that's a fair point, right? I don't know if you're a lawyer. I am not. But what I will say is this seems fairly in alignment with the U.S. Supreme Court. I don't think it does anything it doesn't do anything that would be out of alignment with the cases that they have already ruled on. So it's like, why not just bring the state standards to that already? But at the end of the day, I get it. It's going to be great on a mailer. Good for you guys. I don't know if you guys are going to do so hot in the midterms anyways. So I'm glad you guys
historically, I'm glad the party in power does not.
Listen, I'm glad
party in power is Republicans, baby.
I'm glad that board Republicans in the state have something else besides lawyer fees to attack Democrats on. Seriously, it's amazing. I'm happy for you guys.
I would just say that to Becky's point and Julius, at some point you're just going to learn to just not fight, just let her, because she's going to get you with an axe. I mean that respectfully.
Unintended
on that one. What I would say is to Becky's point, yeah, there may have been a vote to align with the Supreme Court decision, but there's a practical reality, and I think Senator Rasmussen correctly and very smartly papered the file and said there is a cause and effect. If you vote this way, someone like this axe murderer can get out of jail. And if I was voting that day, I'm like, look, I understand we need to codify our laws maybe with the Supreme Court if it was that clear, but I'm not going to vote to let an axe murderer out of jail. And there's no get out of jail vote. The mailing still counts. If they slap a mailing on this, and in particular, if this guy does anything while he's out, oh man, that's going to be a problem too.
And just one last point. I do think that the difference that was being voted on here is the number of years that have to be served before open to parole. I think that was and that's again, here it would changed it from 2037 to 2018 that this individual in particular was allowed for parole. So I none of us are legal experts here. We like to play them on TV, but it's going to be one of the fun ones that come out in mailers, and an interesting topic of conversation.
I personally don't know about you guys, but I can't wait to see my state rep's face next to an axe murderer in some ridiculous line. It'll at least be entertaining for the most part. So
I think it's effective. I mean, I'm not I'm not Thomas Jefferson, but I wouldn't want to be on the side that voted to allow an axe murderer out of jail. But we'll see. Hey, I want to thank you both for joining this somewhat macabre episode of the Breakdown with Brodkorb and Becky. I want to thank all our listeners. Before you go, show some love for your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts or on the platform where you listen. You can also follow us across all social media platforms and on our website at @BBBreakPod. The Breakdown with Brodkorb and Becky will be back next week. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey.